Edinburgh, Scotland's capital. Known for its rich history and medical breakthroughs, magnificent architecture, and spectacular cultural events. Add the city's highly skilled workforce, renowned knowledge economy, global connectivity, and quality of life, makes it a great place to invest. Edinburgh BioQuarter, located 3 miles from the city centre, is currently one of the UK's leading locations for life sciences innovation and home to the University of Edinburgh's Medical School and Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh Hospital. Anchored by 4 of Scotland's most prominent organisations, the strength of partnership brings unlimited potential. Where 8,000 people already work or study, a growing list of company success stories and a pipeline of future demand. Already with over £500 million of public capital investment, including the creation of the Usher Institute's new home for data-driven health and social care innovation. As the world looks for answers to a global crisis, the need to find new medical treatments and reignite economies has never been more important. BioQuarter is one of Europe's largest development opportunities of this type. A 61-acre, £1 billion transformation project to create Edinburgh's Health Innovation District, where academics and clinicians rub shoulders with entrepreneurs, students, and families. By creating a public-private partnership, we will deliver at scale and at pace, transforming BioQuarter into a thriving innovation community, a mixed-use development where more than 20,000 people will want to live, learn, work, and discover. Featuring state-of-the-art health innovation facilities alongside shops, cafes, a hotel, nursery, and residential homes, creating a lively environment that promotes the health and well-being of its community. The site will create lasting economic benefits, including 9,000 new jobs on site and 2,000 construction jobs. Provide a long-term social benefit through skills and education programs, improved local transport and facilities, a zero-carbon place where people will want to be. Global ambitions, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Edinburgh's Health Innovation District is here.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning at this online Bidders Day for the Edinburgh BioQuarter. We've got a really great set of speakers here for you, and it's great that so many of you have joined us. I, in all of this time, have run 60 plus events for the entire year, but have never run before an online bidders event. So this is a first for me. I think it's probably a first for everybody on the panel, and maybe possibly a first for everybody here who's joining us. You can use the Q&A, you can use the chat. We'll be using those. There's some great presentations coming up, just to kind of highlight the opportunities there and give you more information about this. First of all, though, I'd just like to ask everybody to introduce themselves. Just give us a kind of very quick introduction of yourself and what you do, particularly with the project as well, so that then everybody knows who you are and what you do. And we'll ask everybody that so that we can all introduce ourselves, and then everybody who's an attendee knows exactly who everybody is. Ashley.
I am Director of Operations for Corporate Services at the University, and I lead the University's engagement into the BioQuarter partnership. So that's in all its auspices in terms of the different disciplines that we have, and including going through our governance process for any permissions that we need for our approvals to proceed with the partnership as well.
Super, thanks very much. Nick.
I'm Nick Mills. I'm a cardiologist working at the BioQuarter in the Royal Infirmary, but I'm here really in my capacity as the Senior Responsible Officer for the Data Driven Innovation Programme, which will reside at the Usher Institute on the campus.
That's great. Thanks very much. Anna.
My name is Anna Stamp, and I have the privilege of being the Interim Programme Director for the Edinburgh BioQuarter. I work on behalf of the 4 partner organisations leading development of the new vision for BioQuarter.
That's great. Thank you. Ian.
Ian Graham, I'm Director of Capital Planning and Projects for NHS Lothian, responsible for our board's capital investment programme in hospitals and related facilities, including those anticipated for further development on the BioQuarter. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Ian. Mark?
I'm a consultant with Cushman & Wakefield. I'm a chartered surveyor. I specialise in developments and development scenario planning, and I'm advising the partnership on the commercialisation and the commercial aspects of the BioQuarter.
Great. Thank you. Kev?
Hi, good morning. I'm Kev Dallow. I'm a pulmonologist working at the BioQuarter at the NHS Lothian site. So I work across healthcare technology and really focusing on entrepreneurship and innovation.
Super. Derek?
Hi, I'm Derek McCrindle, Scottish Enterprise Head of Place, and I'm the Senior Responsible Owner for the Scottish Enterprise Investment.
Great. Thank you. Colin?
I am Colin Mahaffey. I'm Chief Operating Officer for the Usher Institute. I work with Nick owning the strategic plan and delivery of the Health and Social Care Data-Driven Innovation Programme.
Great. Thank you. And last but very much not least, Paul?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Paul Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director for Place at City of Edinburgh Council. I'm responsible for economic development. I'm responsible for planning, transportation, and I lead for the council on the BioQuarter.
That's great. And we'll start off with a presentation from Anna.
Okay, well, thank you, Richard, and good morning, everybody. This is a really exciting time for BioQuarter, and there very much is a new chapter in front of us. And today, I'll say a bit more about our vision and proposal before I hand over to two of our superstar academics who are going to spotlight for you the new Usher Institute and also give you a flavour for some of the research and the innovation that's going on today at BioQuarter. So just to go back a few years, the story of BioQuarter really starts back in the early mid-90s when the city secured land out at an area of Edinburgh called Little France. In 1997, planning consent was granted for the new hospital, which was a relocation of the largest Edinburgh city main hospital, moving out from Lawson Place out to this area of Edinburgh, alongside the University Medical School as well. So in 2002, the Chancellor's Building is opened, and hot on its heels, the Royal Infirmary itself opens. For those of us that live in the city will remember that date. Moving on, about a few years later, the university opened its flagship research facility, the Queen's Medical Research Institute, in 2006. And then about 6 years later, SCRIM opens, the Scottish Centre for Regenerative Medicine, and really that was the first presence on the other side of the BioQuarter. Shortly after, Building 9 opens, which was the first innovation building on the site, through to today's, which is a couple of years ago, the IRR started on site and soon to finish in the next couple of years. All in all, £520 million worth of investment has taken place. There's nearly 70 acres of development on the site, and about 2.5 million square feet of development has taken place. BioQuarter today, and just a fly through of what we have on site as of today's world. BioQuarter is anchored by University of Edinburgh's Medical School, which sits in the Chancellor's Building, which you can see on the screen, very much the home of medicine. And also the translational research, which takes place in the QMRI and the SCRIM building, part of their world-leading research facilities that they have, both in town and at Easterbush and at Little France here. And also there's a data-driven research facility, which is currently occupied in Building 9 and soon to be located in the Usher facility, which we'll hear a bit more about later. Again, anchored as well, the site is very much by the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, with very much got a presence of three. The main hospital building, the Simpsons maternity, and also the soon to open new Royal Hospital for children and young people. And up at the top is the Building 9, which is the commercialisation centre for BioQuarter currently. And BioQuarter is part of a thriving life sciences sector in Scotland and the UK. It employs 41,000 people across a vast array of organisations with a turnover of 6.5 billion in 2009. And as the film said, behind the BioQuarter, very important, the four very prominent organisations. We have Scottish Enterprise, the University of Edinburgh, the City of Edinburgh Council, and we have NHS Lothians. And the four organisations very much with a shared ambition moving forward. Advanced health and discovery and education. We have economic growth, but we also, very importantly, is part of a regeneration of the local areas in and around BioQuarter. But the next chapter is in front of us, and really that's about unlocking BioQuarter's full potential. And to do this, the intention is to undertake a public-private partnership, EBQ5. It will be EBQ5 that will take forward the development and will really unlock the future potential of BioQuarter. So our vision for the future is very clear. We are looking to transform BioQuarter into Edinburgh's Health Innovation District. We have all the key components an innovation district requires. We have critical mass, the largest concentration of innovation assets focused on the UK. We will have almost 20,000 academics, clinicians and industry all under one roof. We plan to become a global destination for health-focused innovators and entrepreneurs. We have the shared ambition of the four partners, that is to be a global destination. We're looking to accelerate solutions for health. We're looking for economic growth and regeneration. We have strong leadership. We will establish a board, EBQ5, which will replace the existing board, and it will look to oversee the ownership and the stewardship of the BioQuarter. And of course we have collaboration, creating a culture of sharing and working together across the district. And diversity and inclusion. We look to reach out to all the local communities with both skills and education, including jobs and facilities, and be a very key component of that local regeneration. So we have all the key ingredients that a thriving innovation district requires, but very much the key to this is the place strategy and actually taking BioQuarter and creating what is required for today's world. 20 years ago, to find an innovation economy, a worker had to drive very much to a secluded suburban business park. They would work in a lot of isolation and then very much drive home again. And today people want to be in urban places which are walkable, bikeable, and where they can bump into other people. Businesses want to be near other businesses, research labs and universities, so more smart ideas can be turned into new products. And innovation districts are becoming competitive places, cool spaces where people very much want to live, learn, discover together. So our emerging place strategy, the transition BioQuarter from what it is today, which is an out-of-town science park, to an urban neighbourhood of Edinburgh. A place for people to live, learn, work, play, relax and discover, all in one place under one roof. Proximity to each other, so we're looking for to provide shops and cafes, hotels, nurseries, sitting beside residential estate, sitting right beside the innovation, all together creating a vibrant and buzz and a critical mass of people. We want to create collaboration spaces everywhere across the site, both formal and informal, inside the buildings and outside the buildings. Wellbeing, incredibly important for a site of this nature. We're looking to have good quality public outdoor spaces. Accessibility, very essential to the plans, is to create a good transport link to BioQuarter from all parts of Edinburgh city centre and the peripheral. And we want to be porous. We want strong connectivity with our local communities. We want to bring them in, and we want them to use the BioQuarter as well. We want to promote walking and cycling between the various sites, both the local communities in terms of the residential, but also some of the proximity communities like King's Buildings, Easterbush, Peffermill as well. We want, of course, clean air, essential for well-being, and we have an ambition of a carbon neutral future. And of course, what every site needs, coffee for meeting, for relaxing, and for, again, making BioQuarter a destination. So just to take you around our emerging master plan, the sites at the front, that is the pipeline sites for the university and the NHS Lothian, looking to deliver the Usher in the next 2 years. And beyond that, very much a firm pipeline of projects over the next 5 to 10 years. Into the land that will be part of the joint venture, we're currently looking at it in zones. Each zone will have a mix of accommodation, and we're working with planning colleagues just now on that, what that mix is, the density and the quantum of accommodation required, but very much dominated by commercial tenant space in and around the site, sitting side by side with the residential estate, bringing that vibrancy and mix use. We're looking to bring in a new innovation hub, very much the heart of innovation, both in terms of industry space, but also collaboration space, a place where ideas can start, people can come to the innovation hub and work with others. We're looking for hotels, we're looking for nurseries, we're looking for supermarkets, everything that you would expect a modern day neighbourhood to have, to attract, retain people who actually live and work on the site. But it's also a place for local communities by creating an area of public outreach, a skills centre, very much reaching out to the communities and bringing them in and giving them a reason to come to BioQuarter. And then, of course, on site, currently there's no gym facilities, so very much a priority is to deliver and to open up a wellbeing hub with gym, GP, dentists, which a site with 13,000 in the short term, 20,000 in the long term population require. And some of the outputs that we're targeting, there is 61 acres of developable land available to the private sector partner. Our place strategy is emerging, and we're estimating approximately 4 million square feet of new space that can be provided on that land. We're looking at an increase of the innovators' population by 7,000, and jobs and construction jobs very much essential to both the economic growth for the site and circa 1 billion gross development value long term over the duration. And you can see with the slide here the quantum of space that's available in yellow, built for mixed use in its undeveloped. And very much the mantra is why BioQuarter. We intend to have a high concentration of innovation assets all in one location across the wider region of Scotland. Very much BioQuarter has the land, it's all on one site, and the proximity of the sites sets us aside from other sites. Of course, we already have the investment from the city deal, the £1.3 billion which gives us a distinct advantage to grow. And we'll hear a bit more about the data-driven innovation later. And then, of course, BioQuarter, we believe, offers a diverse and opportunity-rich environment with everything that's going on in the site. So finally, just a bit on the procurement exercise. The further details are in the PIN, which I hope you have downloaded. The BioQuarter partners, so the intention is to seek a private sector partner to establish a joint venture vehicle. We're doing this through OJU competitive dialogue procurement procedure, which is two-stage, which we're currently developing. Our intention is to go live with this Q1 of next year. And appreciate that an OJU procurement process can be lengthy and resource heavy. So what we're looking to do is to try and make the first stages, the shortlisting stages, to be as quick and as light on resource as possible. And we're looking for a partner who has already experience and skills of developing and operating a science, health, or technology site. We're looking for a company that has the financial weight and that will work with us and really focus on what BioQuarter is all about, and that is health-related innovation.
And we're now going to hear from Professor Nick Mills. And Nick's going to do a presentation on data-driven innovation in health and social care. So Nick, if you want to share your screen, that would be great.
So just by way of further introduction, I'm here as part of a team with Colin. We run together the Data-Driven Innovation Programme in health and social care. A key aspect of that is the building of a new Usher Institute on the BioQuarter campus. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Institute itself, but also our programme activity over the next 10 years. Now, you've heard a bit about the Sea Region deal already. It's £1.3 billion of investment in the region. Almost half of that is going to deliver a data-driven innovation programme. It brings together UK and Scottish government priorities with our local authorities and all the higher education authorities. And Edinburgh University is very much taking a lead role in the delivery of this programme. We want to draw inward investment to the region, stimulate entrepreneurship, and ultimately facilitate economic growth across the region. The programme, the wider programme, has the ambitious challenge of becoming the data capital of Europe over the next 10 years in doing this. My focus is on health and social care, but and although the new Usher Institute is going to sit at the heart of the BioQuarter campus, we very much are a network of innovation hubs, bringing together data science through the Bayes Institute, agritech through Easterbush, the wider impact of data-driven innovation on society and the finance sector through the Edinburgh Futures Institute. And we're ultimately underpinned by a £100 million investment in a new facility called the Edinburgh International Data Facility, run by the EPCC, Edinburgh Parallel Computing Centre in Edinburgh, who currently hosts the UK supercomputer infrastructure. And this facility is going to be really fundamental in terms of delivering our programs. Our goals are to generate new talent, skill people in the region in order to thrive in this digital economy, generate new knowledge, and drive forward innovation. In my particular sector, we have a number of pretty substantial challenges, of which COVID-19 has added to our situation. You know, in this region alone, we're estimating that by the end of our program, our population will have increased from 1.2 to 1.5 million. Staggeringly, that is going to include a doubling of those over the age of 75, who of course are the major users of most of our health and social care services. That is a success story for modern medicine, but brings with it some significant challenges to the way we deliver care, particularly in the community where 70% of our spend on health and social care takes place. How does data solve these problems? Well, it starts by ensuring better communication between primary, secondary, and social care in order to tackle age-old problems like delayed discharge. But we have to do it in an environment where we're increasingly under pressure to reduce spend. Every year there's a roughly 20% increase in the cost of the treatments that we have available. We have to somehow ensure that we're delivering good value for the health service and our partners. Why Scotland and why this region for data-driven innovation? Well, we have a single healthcare provider, essentially, in Scotland, which allows us to bring together a population of 5.4 million with cradle-to-grave data linked through a unique number, the Community Health Index. And we've been working on this for 30 years in order to drive insights into health and care outcomes. We also have substantial backing by the Scottish Government through policy commitments to facilitate integration between social and health care, principally by sharing data, knowledge and resources. I would also say, having worked in this region for 20 years, that we have really fabulous partnerships between our healthcare providers, the academic institutions here, industry, and super support from the public for these initiatives. So I've had the pleasure of living and working in this in the BioQuarter since it opened, really, since we first moved patients across from the old Royal Infirmary. I've worked in the hospital, I've worked in the Queen's Medical Research Institute, the Scottish Centre for Regenerative Medicine, and the medical school. But I think the New Usher Institute is going to be a pretty unique place. Our goals are to bring together the wider public sector, private sector, and third sectors to stimulate data-enabled improvements in the care, health and care of people in our region and beyond. The building itself is only one aspect of this. We have a substantial program over the next 10 years in order to deliver these improvements in care outcomes. And critically, it's an outward-looking program. We're looking to deliver this not just for the University of Edinburgh, but for our partner organisations, of which I hope that many of you will become. So just a little bit about our strategic asset. This is our impression of the building. It's due to open in 2023. It will house around 1,000 individuals, not just academics from the university, but health and social care providers, and those that want to engage and develop new businesses in this sector. This is a picture of it from the hospital side, looking back up the hill to the BioQuarter, and this is an image I think you've seen earlier in Anna's presentation, which shows the position of the New Usher Institute really at the heart of this campus, bridging the established infrastructure with the new vision for the site. The ground floor of this building is really important to us, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about how to develop it, because it's really important that it is there for the community of people that are living and working in this area. It is not going to be a closed swipe access university building. It's going to have an innovation hub with a fabulous data observatory, an outreach facility, a public presentation area within a public cafe, in order to make sure that our partners in the region and our academics doing fabulous research and innovation projects have the opportunity to share what they're doing with people working in the area. As you move up the building, the plan is to house a series of neighbourhoods. So we'll have 10 different neighbourhoods. That'll bring together the Centre for Medical Informatics, who are very interested in applied AI in healthcare. It'll bring together a new centre, the Advanced Care Research Centre, funded recently by Legal & General to a tune of £20 million to help us understand how to develop new approaches for healthy aging. We also have some really important Health Data Research UK innovation hubs like Breathe, as well as established groups that are going to relocate to the campus, including the Edinburgh Clinical Trials Unit, the Centre for Population and Global Health. So we are going to be a very mixed group, and we hope that our partners will help us deliver on our key objectives over the next 10 years, in part through this infrastructure. But our aims are much broader. We want to develop and train students and existing health and social care professionals so that they can engage in data-enabled improvements in health and social care. We have a target of 9,000 students. We also aim to bring in significant additional investment over and above the £100 million that we have secured for this programme in order to drive forward particularly applied and interdisciplinary research that will impact on patients, not just in our region, but much more broadly by demonstrating the value of data-driven innovation to to our global healthcare community. We also want to engage with industry, not just through bringing in investment to the region, but with helping to support up to 250 different companies, both private and third sector companies, in order to promote the acceleration of artificial intelligence and other innovative solutions to healthcare. Data underpins everything we do. And actually, the first program that we set up is a £5 million investment in something called Data Law. This is quite an important strategic program for our innovation hub that will allow us to access linked data from primary, secondary, and social care providers across the region for everyone living in our region. And lastly, we want to use this infrastructure, the support that we put in through the DDI program to drive forward new business and to support small startup companies in the region. We can't do this as a university alone, of course, so this is a really important outward-looking program where we are fostering, I think, a number of key partnerships already. First and foremost, we signed a strategic plan with the Chief Executive of NHS Lothian at the beginning of February last year on how the data-driven innovation program is going to work with all the health boards across the region. In developing a data repository and services that facilitate the use of this data, we want to help them to develop a data-driven approach to the prevention and treatment of all health conditions in the region, and ultimately to develop a learning healthcare system that can be a template for other regions and other countries. I was going to tell you a little bit about some of the challenges, some of the programs that we have set up in response to these challenges. Many of them have been dwarfed a little by our response to COVID-19, where we've been providing real-time data to healthcare providers, to academics, to businesses interested in developing new diagnostic tests for COVID-19. But we retain a very strong ambition to tackle these big challenges over the longer term in this program. And I'd be delighted to take any specific questions about the program or general questions later on in the session. Thanks for your attention.
That's great. Thanks very much, Nick. Really interesting. And we're going to follow that up now with a presentation from Kev. So Kev, if you want to share your screen.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, and good morning all, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And just following on from Nick and Anna's talk, so I was going to give you a very brief sort of 10-minute overview of the things that we have been doing recently over the last few years. So I'm a pulmonologist with an interest in infection, which, as you can all gather now, is quite an unfortunate mix of current global focus at the moment. So my interests have been around developing imaging tools, but also healthcare technology. And over the last 4 or 5 years, been really working towards trying to think about a holistic view of trying to push healthcare technology, specifically on the BioQuarter site. And we set up something called the Healthcare Technology Accelerator Facility, which really brought together multiple universities from across the UK, but focusing down on the BioQuarter side in terms of the translational pathway of how we could take tools, technology, and concepts forward with, as we've heard described, a really strong anchor partnership of NHS Lothian and the University of Edinburgh sitting juxtapositioned right next to each other. So when I started trying to do this, I have to give you some honest appraisal of where we are and we were. The concept of translation or commercial translation sometimes felt like we were walking along a pier and falling off into a big sea or not knowing where to go and waiting for someone to pick you up. In the recent past, that idea of translating both commercially and academically has required jumping bridges, which required a lot of gold bullion and time, which again is extremely difficult to navigate. But it's pretty clear where we want to go, which is we want to be fighter pilots. We want to be lean, mean, focused, and go as fast as possible. And I think that vision is what BioQuarter can enable. So from my perspective, as an interventional pulmonologist or interventionalist, it seemed pretty straightforward. What if we brought people together? What if we brought people, technologists, engineers, physicists, mathematicians, people together What if we began at the bottom about a cultural change? We need to speak each other's languages. We absolutely need to fight disease and not each other. We do too much fighting generally. And we need to think about global health priorities and if we fuse innovation at a clinical side. And that's really what we've been doing on the BioQuarter since it opened. This is an old picture, but with lots of purple dots, but specifically the building I work in is one building that's been there from the beginning, which Anna described, called the Queen's Medical Research Institute. And that building came up with a vision to help translate innovations into patients. And the QMRI has been an inspirational place for myself and people that I work with, because it's had a joined up vision. Joined up vision is it's not just for research, it's about actually making tools. And here we're making fibers and chemicals. It's about testing them in one place. It's about building quality management systems to make pharmaceuticals and then to take them back into patients. And that happens in one building 100 meters away from the hospital. And that is absolutely pivotal to how we need to move fast. So what do we need? We need healthcare technology from the bottom up. And we need it to happen alongside the clinical interface. So this concept of bedside to bench, and the other way, bench to bedside innovation. And I'm particularly passionate about bottom up innovation and thinking about the pathways. So we've been working towards fusing clinicians, funded by one of the research councils in the UK called the MRC, with lots of fundamental engineers, physical scientists, funded by another part of the UK government called the EPSRC. And thinking about how we coordinate these activities. And we need to do things that we wouldn't normally do as clinicians or academics. We need to think about the economics. We need to think about the IP, the way we segment the market, the way we project manage, and fundamentally how we take that early stage technology and segue it through into clinical use and then mentor these groups and young people forward. So doing that, we've been working on lots of different projects. And just a broad feeling on the BioQuarter site, there's virtually every clinical speciality, and they're expanding as well. So it offers cross-pollination. So working with cardiologists like Nick, or rheumatologists, or pediatricians, or oncologists allows me as a respiratory physician to think quite broadly with tools and tech that I make for my disease and think very broadly across the piece. But fundamentally, what's been really important is about culturally imprinting. It's vital that we think about products from the beginning, that we build entrepreneurial networks. And I think one of the things that BioQuarter is letting us do is actually develop confidence to fail fast. That's really important. We need test beds to do this, and really the comfort zone and training that we can offer. So moving forward, there's lots of buildings going up, which is absolutely fantastic. This is another cartoon, another building that's going up currently, and it's called the IRR, the Institute for Repair and Generation. And the great thing about this and other buildings is they're being made to be multifunctional, with spaces for multiple scientific disciplines to come in and mold together. So our push is really about scientific excellence, clinical need, and now commercialization power that can come in with multiple partners. So the next is a cartoon that one of my PhD students did, and it was around a light bulb. So we all have ideas. We walk around, oh, I could do that. I've just seen a patient. But the reality is, if we start fusing disciplines from the engineers and mathematicians, the biologists, physics, data science, and chemists, we can actually make things real. And this is a really cheesy slide. I don't want to get too cheesy, but we are fighting disease. It's about teamwork. And the last 6-7 years, we've been on this sort of fantastic voyage of trying to do something very, very different. I'm going to give you a snapshot of that. So what we decided about 7 years ago is we actually don't understand what's happening in people's lungs. So I'm going to go back to my core speciality now. What we decided to start making were microscopes that could pass deep inside lungs to try and make the invisible visible. And to do that, we actually had to bring fiber technology in to make tiny fibers. And these are pictures on the left of how we make fibers with partners in the University of Bath. We bring them to BioQuarter. We actually make products that we package. And the idea is then we're going to actually go deep inside people's lungs and actually spray chemicals to understand what's happening. Now, we were doing this before COVID started. And I'll talk to you about what we've had to do since COVID started. Because back then we were trying to understand what happens when lungs start to fail. And we developed the capability on the BioQuarter site for technology capability. We were making photonic fibers. We started to integrate detectors. We were making chemicals called smart probes, systems, and then we were translating back in the intensive care. What that allowed us to do was actually develop global translational capability. The top is not an underground map. That's actually a map of what it takes to take a product through, but we've navigated that. So we can make devices, one on the bottom. On the top right is a picture of a pharmaceutical suite that allows us to take small-scale pharmaceuticals into patients, and then small interventional tools such as fibers at the bottom. So what we've really focused on is for patients and society, we have to be entrepreneurial, we have to commercialize, we have to build new enterprises, and we have to move forward fast. So I'm going to give you the last 2 minutes of what happened, obviously, in February or March when things changed, bookended. And so building on that, we started a program called Stop COVID. So we work in the Centre for Inflammation Research, and our focus for the last 30 years has been on trying to understand why lung inflammation becomes aberrant. And clearly when this happened, we were pivoting as fast as possible to try and repurpose drugs that could actually help the lungs. And we brought in both industrial, commercial and grant funding as fast as possible to start a program called Stop COVID, the focus of which was to bring together all of our expertise on the BioQuarter site as fast as possible to try and pivot. We pivoted, bringing in the healthcare technology accelerator facility, the engineering and optics, drug developers for the Centre for Information Research, regulatory and clinical networks. We wanted to pivot our entire research portfolio, which we did. So all the fibers, imaging technology we were working, all the chemical sensors, the fundamental biology, all of our drug trials and clinical studies have been repivoted to COVID. And we've switched 150 people onto COVID-19 research within our group on the BioQuarter site. And what we've been trying to do is actually accelerate the development of drug delivery and imaging, knowing that we need to find new drugs. So what we've done in the last 4 or 5 months on the BioQuarter site is we've launched a program of sampling and post-mortem. We've started from a standing start. We've set up an experimental medicine program called Define. We've developed a community experimental medicine program in primary care. That's in patients who are before hospital. We've formed this CTA and REC. That means we've got the authorizations with 3 drugs in less than 8 weeks. We've brought together a chemistry and engineering team. We've created an industry academia cluster with over 100 new links and contracts now being developed to take assets forward. And we've started innovation partnerships with over 190 small and medium enterprises, really focusing on some of the core challenges. We've kicked off a pan-UK effort for UVC lamps to try and disinfect environments. And most importantly now, we've also started to partner with India. So that gives you an idea of how the BioQuarter can mobilize. And just the last slide is really, again, not trying to bring this back to what we're facing, but we're fighting COVID-19, not each other. And the BioQuarter is letting us move as fast as possible.
Thanks very much, Kev. To you and Nick as well, really interesting, I think. Obviously, we know a lot now more about what the aims are and the collaboration. But how does that fit in with, because obviously there's Edinburgh, southeast of Scotland, city regional deals. How does that work in terms of, I guess, encouraging innovation? Because you mentioned collaboration a lot there, Nick, and just how does that work, I suppose, for people who may be looking at this project more widely?
The innovation can happen in so many ways. We are looking to provide support for any organization or partner, potential partner within the city region that wants to do something that will help us to improve health and social care, whether they are an existing GP practice or a private care provider, or even voluntary sector that works with people with specific needs. We will try and support them, whether that's to bring in investment to their program, give them knowledge or know-how. And ultimately, we're looking to set up a pipeline for generating new businesses in this area. And I'll maybe ask Colin to speak a little about the entrepreneurship program that we're trying to create. That will cover all sectors, not just health and social care, but I think will be a really important asset.
Yeah, to respond to that, Nick, as well, the cross-sectoral approach. So innovation for our programme is not just in health and social care. So the cross-sectoral approach has been baked in right from the start. SAN's innovation audit was the genesis of our city region deal, the data-driven innovation aspect. And that identified 10 sectors which are being carried across the innovation hubs, which are being invested in. There's specialists housed in each of those hubs, both in terms of entrepreneurship and sectorally as well. One thing to note is at the heart of what we're doing is interdisciplinarity. So in a matrix sense, we have a cross-fertilization, if you like, of academic disciplines and sectors. What we're really looking to do with our partners is to complete that kind of triple helix of the academic expertise, the public sector partners who we're working with very well, and we've committed to leveraging almost £150 million from commercial partners as well as part of this programme. So I think there's lots of room for innovation, but we're not just looking at single sector. We want to encourage interdisciplinarity, and we want to encourage a cross-sectoral approach.
And just in terms of the Usher Institute, how do you see that enabling collaboration, innovation, and is that designed to collaborate, I guess, across the UK, but also international partners? What's the overall vision there?
I mean, we already are an extraordinarily well-connected institute, which exists in a virtual form across the city in 5 separate locations, running UK-wide programs and multiple international programs. So it's about bringing together some of that expertise in one place in order to learn from each other and make sure we do that better. But very much outward looking. In this virtual world post-COVID-19, I don't think there's anything that you can't do remotely. And we want to very much capitalize on that to drive forward research and work with businesses anywhere, accepting that our fundamental goals are to support the local economy through the city region deal. And we will absolutely do that through job creation and business creation. But
Mark, I just wanted to pick up with you. You're obviously looking at the markets more broadly, particularly in terms of the real estate and infrastructure side. Just in terms of this kind of health innovation, life science, how much? I mean, we've been seeing quite a lot in terms of a focus in the media around this, but how much of this is underpinned, do you think, by demand? What's your sense of that in terms of, I suppose, the demand for this kind of asset and how you see that's developing?
When we started to look at how to formulate the master plan, Richard, we began really with the demand question: who's out there, what do they want, how are they going to occupy it? And within the life science sector, there's the view, the sort of the traditional people in white coats putting chemicals into test tubes in a laboratory environment. What we've heard today is a real transition and away from that, and we're moving now into a technology-based innovation or support in terms of how you trial drugs and such like. So we began really with the view of what's available and who's out there in the traditional life sciences sector. And what are we going to see in the emerging med tech, health tech sectors as well? And the Scottish Government provide quite good figures for employment growth. And we could study that to look at basically produce a model for how the BioQuarter, Edinburgh BioQuarter, could react to the likely growth in job numbers. We also looked at detail of what's happened historically, not just in the traditional life sciences sector, but where emerging medtech, health tech companies had moved to elsewhere in Edinburgh, not necessarily on science parks, and built a sort of double-edged model, one looking at projected growth over a very, very long period, and one looking at historic demand and the growth in there. And actually both models mirrored each other quite nicely. So that gave us a huge amount of confidence that there is a sizable and growing demand, and we could translate that into a footprint. And looking at Edinburgh broadly speaking, that footprint's probably in the order of 60,000, 70,000 square feet per annum moving forward. So there's a very sizable demand that underpins the development of the master plan.
And Ashley, just coming to you, in terms of the university, I suppose for people who don't know, what's the commitment currently to Edinburgh BioQuarter, and I suppose why has that been, or why do you see it as strategically important? And also maybe pick up a little bit on the city deal that Nick was mentioning as well.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Richard. So in terms of the university's commitment to BioQuarter, this is a really strategic investment for the university that started around 2 decades ago. So in Anna's presentation, she chatted nicely through a storyboard over the last couple of decades, which really started with our journey in moving our start of our medical teaching out to the site next door to the new Royal Infirmary when it moved from its base at the Meadows in the city centre. And it's that proximity of partnership between medical teaching alongside the acute care, primary care facilities that really help us nurture our research environment at the university. And over the last couple of decades since we moved our medical teaching out, and the QMRI, which Anna mentioned earlier on as well, and also I think Kev and Nick also alluded to QMRI and the strength of the base that provides at BioQuarter. There are a number of other research institutes that have been created there as well over the last 15 or so years that really talk to our research strengths, both in terms of regenerative medicine, brain science, translational medicine, which Kev talked about the strengths of as part of his presentation. So we've been on a journey now for a couple of decades that really created a foundation for the university's strategic presence at BioQuarter, and we very much see us having a presence there in the decades to come. And I think there's maybe about 500 or so million of investment that's been made at BioQuarter so far to date, and the university has made a substantial proportion of that investment and is very much committed to its plans on the campus going forward. And I think Nick spoke very eloquently earlier in terms of the Usher Institute and its presence at BioQuarter, but not just the fact about the data science strengths and the healthcare innovations that can come from working with the data sets there, but also the strength in terms of the connectivity through to the other innovation hubs that are being created as part of data-driven innovation, as part of the city deal as well, which really connects BioQuarter through to other campuses within the university, such as Easterbush and agritech possibilities out there, and that association with One Health in terms of really driving forward healthcare innovation, but across the other aspects of the city as well, which really, I think, creates tremendous opportunity for industry to come and collaborate with us at BioQuarter.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that that kind of view on. I mean, we've done a lot of discussions around particularly winning cities and those aspects of it, and how do you create an innovation ecosystem. And Derek, it'd be interesting just to pick up from you. From your side, obviously there's a huge amount of priorities at the moment in terms of government. And post-COVID, we're in a very different economic situation. So in terms of a priority for you, how important is BioQuarter? And I suppose, how do you see that within the overall view of sort of investment in Scotland?
So you're absolutely right. There's certainly lots to be done to support the economy at this particular time. Today, the Scottish Government issues the Programme for Governance, which a lot of new initiatives and Scottish Enterprise and all the agencies will have a major role to play in that. But let's not forget that the really important role that the collaboration, the partnership, the stuff we've talked about this morning at BioQuarter, how much that can do to support the economy. We're talking about building a really strong futuristic health innovation district. And if we get the right private sector partner with the right experience, the right ability, the right investment opportunity, then that will create massive opportunities for the economy in terms of infrastructure investment, in terms of that will lead to new company formation and growth of existing companies. It will make more jobs, and ultimately this will make Scotland more globally competitive in healthcare, which is a key plank of the Programme for Government. So I'm really confident that BioQuarter remains very much a priority for Scottish Enterprise and for the government.
Okay, great. And Kev, just coming to you. I mean, there's a lot of mention around the sort of innovation ecosystems. How do you see those opportunities, particularly at the BioQuarter?
So I think the greatest strength of BioQuarter will be the young people that will be there, Richard. So the innovation ecosystem will be born out of human capital that's mixing on that site. So I truly believe that the moulding that's happening with the medical school, with the new hospital sites, everything coming together, it creates a unique appetite for that innovation ecosystem, particularly with the strength and the size of NHS Lothian growing on that site. So it's not just the clinically qualified, the allied, specialties, physiotherapists, front end nurses on the front line, receptionists, lots of people, Richard, that can innovate. And I think that's the really exciting bit. Anyone can be an innovator on that site. So that's exciting. So it's the people and the human capital on that site which will be the biggest asset.
Interesting, good. And Paul, there's obviously a lot of, one of the key things for I guess for successful cities and successful areas is that connectivity side of things. Looking at the transportation side, how do you see that connectivity at the moment? And certainly when I visited Scotland, I've seen the tram routes extended. Is there going to be a tram route extended? I know there was a discussion around a tram route extended to the area. What's the position in terms of connectivity in general?
It was interesting to see Anna's slide with the model of the person getting in the car and driving to an out of town location in the past, and that all looking very different today. So it set an interesting kind of transportation and connectivity context to that, I thought. BioQuarter is an interesting location. Edinburgh is a very important city economically in the UK, potentially the most important city in terms of productivity outside of London, with the possible exception of Greater Manchester. But it's very compact, and that's the difference, say, between Edinburgh and Manchester, Birmingham. Very compact, lack of sprawl, and very densely occupied. And what that means is existing public transportation is actually relatively straightforward. You can get from the BioQuarter on a bus. As it happens, the council owns the bus company in Edinburgh, or most of the bus company, the dominant bus company, Lothian Buses. So very unusual situation where we have a much greater influence over public transport than anywhere else in the UK outside London. You can get on a bus from the city centre to the BioQuarter in about 10 minutes. So relatively straightforward today. Tomorrow, by which I kind of almost literally mean tomorrow, the key improvements we want to make are in the areas of active travel. And you'll have seen in the kind of immediate COVID period, the explosion of people using what we might call old tech, bikes, newer tech, e-bikes, absolutely exploded in the city. So we are installing now dedicated infrastructure to connect the BioQuarter to the city centre to kind of give the protection that people using active travel want. And then finally, as you suggest, Richard, we've had a plan now for some years for a new tram line, actually to go north-south. So anybody familiar with Edinburgh will know the existing tram line, which goes from the airport in the west of the city through the west of Edinburgh and into the city centre. We're currently expanding that. And if you hear noise from my window, that's the noise of the guys on the streets building it. So that will effectively complete the east-west tram line in the city. What we move on to next is the north-south tram line, and really interestingly, that connects the city centre to the BioQuarter in the south, but not just the BioQuarter, because in the north we have a major waterfront development site on the Forth, again predominantly in council ownership, again coming to the market relatively soon, an area of the city known as Granton. So we'll connect the major regeneration area of the city, which we see as an exemplar in 21st century living, Granton, with the BioQuarter in the south, which is clearly going to be, as everybody else has described, an absolute kind of focal point for our innovation ecosystems and a kind of triple helix in action. So we kind of see that as the next north-south tram phase. We will reinsert the importance of that in our statutory planning documents later this year, and we will start working on the business case to see how we can take that forward as early as possible.
Maybe just coming to you, Ian, I mean, you're coming at it from, of course, the estates infrastructure side in terms of your role there at NHS Lothian. But but I guess it's probably useful for other potential partners to know your kind of commitment to, I suppose, innovation firstly, but also then to the BioQuarter more generally, Ian.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, NHS Lothian, you might say, is one of the anchor tenants, having brought the Royal Infirmary to the site a number of years ago, as Anna and others have mentioned. The commitment remains, and we're currently awaiting business case approval for a new ophthalmology services pavilion on the site. And as a link between that physical asset and the BioQuarter, and touched on in the same way by Nick and colleagues in terms of the Usher, unusually we are looking to integrate collaboration space into a hospital facility, so it isn't a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 and clinicians in white coats and patients only, but actually embraces the BioQuarter concept and the connectivity with clinicians, industry, academia, and patients. And that's been the philosophy generally across the hospital campus on the site. A lot of integration between the research and innovation generally. Beyond the iPavilion, we're looking at other investments that are cross-partner developments, including City of Edinburgh Council and the University of Edinburgh in terms of life sciences, etc. And ultimately, as Anna touched on in terms of her presentation, the population working and living in that area is going to require further primary care support, community support, and the wider developments in the area will also open up opportunities for development and economic development as well.
Great. There's a couple of questions I just want to pick up with you, Anna, if I can. I'll read these out just in case there's somebody who's joining us via phone. But thanks, Gordon, for this. At this juncture, can you indicate how long the competitive dialogue process is likely to last? How many will be shortlisted to this stage, and what's likely to be the format of the competitive dialogue process? Also, is there any steer on what you'll be looking for from your private sector partners in addition to relevant experience? And another one coming in as well from Richard there, which is, will demand modelling be made available? So it'd be interesting just to get your sense of that, and obviously there's only a certain amount of information that you can give at this stage, but I think in more general terms, that also suggests a question about, what are you looking for at this stage and some of the process elements?
So we are deep in our pre-procurement development, as you can imagine, with a go live January, February of next year. We're, as I said in my presentation, our intention is to use OJU competitive dialogue with 2 stages. We're developing our proposals as we speak, so we have no defined answers to your question at this stage. However, I would reinforce that we're looking for, obviously, the shortlisting to be as resource light as possible. I mean, nobody, obviously with the current conditions, we are assuming the market is nervous for a very lengthy, expensive OJU process. So to respond to that, we are going to make this as easily as possible. Obviously, we want the ability for bidders to showcase what they have done on other sites, so we can get a feel for their skills and their experience of themselves, their companies and their teams. So very much the first stage will be a kind of looking back, looking at case studies. We will then shortlist, potentially looking at shortlisting 5 or 6 companies, as yet not agreed, but in that sort of magnitude. And then ultimately down to, similar to other projects of this magnitude, 2 to 3 companies of which to enter into competitive dialogue at that stage. We are anticipating the process to take over a year, perhaps a bit beyond that, looking at other procurement exercises of the same size. And obviously we need to make sure we get the checks and balances in and make sure that this is a very open and fair procedure, but ultimately looking for the right partner to come forward to work with the partnership. As I said, really what we're looking for is an organisation or organisations that already have experience of developing this type of district, science park, healthcare park, that type of entity. But also it's not just about developing. This is not just a property exercise. What we're looking for is a partner who can really demonstrate that they understand how to develop an innovation ecosystem, a health-related innovation ecosystem, that they have demonstrable experience in this, and that they can show us that they can do this and what they've done in the past. And with regards to that, we're very open to that type of model. There are many models across the world of how parks like this are managed and run, and again, really interested for the partner to come in and really influence what we do in the future as well. So a key component of the exercise is an innovation service that will work with our likes of Kev and Nick across the site, and work with our esteemed academics, nurture the pipeline, encourage industry to come in, encourage collaboration across the site, and really bring everybody together, working together at BioQuarter is one of our mantras.
Okay, good. That's interesting. Mark, I just wanted to pick up with you. For those who may be interested, I mean, the master plan obviously details a number of mix of uses within that. Just in terms of the balance of those, how do you see those? And also, if there is an investor who's potentially interested in partnering on this, are there opportunities to potentially revisit this? Is it set in stone? What's the position there?
The master plan, we've been running a series of appraisals really to try and look at how you balance the demand requirements against the placemaking requirements. There has to be, as Anna sort of said, that the placemaking strategy is at the heart of the overall approach to this, and it needs a population both working and residential to support the amenities that are proposed. There are infrastructure costs that need to be covered, so enabling the site has a cost, and it's how those costs can be met within an acceptable time frame. There is a planning journey that is in progress and still has yet to be finalized, that looks at the updating of the existing supplementary planning guidance into a new policy that reflects the current master plan. But all of these are effectively working around the master plan model that's been developed by Oberlanders to date. I fully expect when a private sector partner is brought on board, they will revisit aspects of it, possibly within a renewed and agreed planning framework that looks at the mix of uses, looks at the development parcels that they take forward, really with a view to how that can be aligned to create individually profitable development that can be materially occupied.
I mean, you mentioned place there, and Derek, obviously, you're director of place. Just in terms of I suppose, what Scottish Enterprise is planning to bring to this, what are the areas where, I suppose, working in partnership with others, what do you see yourselves as ideally bringing to the table that is then a collaboration with other partners? So in your way, how do you see your role within this as it develops?
Well, obviously in the current climate, it's no surprise that our public funding, grants, loans, equity is going to be very constrained going forward. So, but fortunately, Scottish Enterprise has been in this position for some time in terms of we have built a really strong network right across Scotland, in fact, a global network. And I would want to emphasise the work of SDI in terms of bringing, you know, a whole array of different partners and partnerships together right across the globe. But we can certainly be creative, and not just in terms of how we use our land and our buildings at BioQuarter, but also bringing expertise from the companies we work with, from the Scottish Investment Bank, from our insights, national opportunities around health, digital, high-value manufacturing, low carbon, a whole array of different areas that we want to bring together. But I would emphasise that very much we want to use our knowledge of Indigenous company growth and global company growth and how we can attract that. So there's a lot that we can offer, a lot that we can bring to bear.
And Paul, just coming to you, I mean, there's obviously an innovation focus nationally. We've heard around that. How does that play through when you're looking into, you know, particularly the BioQuarter and Edinburgh? Is there a real desire to make connections with all of the, you know, with the other innovation areas? What's your sense of that?
Having spent most of my working life in the north of England and come to Scotland 4 or 5 years ago, I would say that Edinburgh represents the best example of a knowledge economy in action in the UK. Okay, there's scale elsewhere, but I think the institutional relationships we have in the city, the way that people work together, means that Edinburgh really, you know, perhaps even above our kind of cultural and festivals offer, our innovation ecosystem is absolutely at the centre of what Edinburgh's all about. So, you know, there's a very, very strong starting point here. I think the important dimension for the BioQuarter is going right back to something that Anna said, actually, is that we have that existing ecosystem primarily focused around the city centre. We have one of Europe's largest incubators at Codebase. We have many of the developments around the University of Edinburgh, which colleagues have talked about. We have commercial premises which house some of our innovation businesses. I suppose the area that many people will be familiar with, where the Edinburgh Futures Institute is being developed in the quarter mile area of the city is a really great example of that. And I suppose what we're trying to do with the BioQuarter is replicate that very urbanistic approach to innovation, which in my view, and Kev really talked about this in terms of the way in which we want people to collide and work together on site, obviously in a very distanced way, as we need to say these days. But we want to recreate that very urbanistic approach, that very connected approach at the BioQuarter to mirror what's already happening in the city centre. So that sense of mixture of use, of dynamism, of not a wall to existing communities, but a porousness, a connection to existing communities. That means schools and so on, all that activity, many of which happens at the moment. And I suppose that's the vision here, is to try and create a mixture of uses, some scientific, some commercial, some leisure-based and so on, that genuinely, coupled with outstanding placemaking, as colleagues have talked about, creates a kind of an innovation environment to match an innovation ecosystem. That's what we're trying to do. We already have that. We know what it looks like and feels like. We now want to recreate it again at the BioQuarter.
Maybe for you, Anna, this one is, do you consider, thanks Michael for this, do you consider the revenues generated from BioQuarter will be predominantly generated from the private sector via commercial lets? This is obviously a multifaceted development. And will there be a requirement for on-campus student accommodation, key worker accommodation, sale and leaseback structures for NHS and council accommodation requirements? Interesting question there, Michael, thanks. And also from Robin here, what are the best examples of science parks or innovation hubs from across the globe that you see either as a template or alternatively as an inspiration for the sort of mixed use opportunity?
If I take the second question first, we've looked across the globe, if you like, at other innovation centres, and there's no one that actually fits everything that we're trying to do. And I think it's a case of taking the good bits from lots of them. I mean, here in the UK, obviously Manchester ID, there's a lot of, they're on a journey as well. And there's a lot of really good ideas coming from there. There's other in Sweden and Australia and over to the US. Again, there's examples of these types of innovation districts. But I think it's fair to say there's not one yet. That a lot of them come from different backgrounds. They're driven by different needs. So it's very difficult to kind of point and say, here's one, we would like to be like that. So I think it's a case, but I think the place strategy though, and creation of a buzzing type of district, you can see that in different shapes and forms in any city centre. I mean, what we're trying to achieve is a mix of people, a mix of businesses, and a real vibrancy, bringing in the residential, which you don't traditionally get in a science park, which tends to be more 9 till 5, sort of 5 days a week, and very focused on the business, if you like. Your first question, I'm going to pass it on to Mark. If Mark, if you want to pick up that first part of the question.
Yeah, so revenues generated for the BioQuarter. I mean, I think we see these coming in 2 or 3 sort of slightly different routes. There's going to be the life sciences element that is built predominantly for letting, so that will drive a rent and an investment income. It may be that the private sector partner elects to work with a wider consortium and delivers residential as part of that. It may be that they take the view that they will parcel the land up, so they'll do the enablement to parcel it and sell it out, and that revenue will drive additional income into the joint venture. I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all answer to this. I think it's probably too early to say at the moment, and it probably will be dictated to a greater degree by the way that parties create their own sort of consortium to come as a joint venture partner.
And Ashley, I just wanted to pick up with you that same point really around the commercialization side, research, innovation. I suppose, how do you see the kind of collaboration opportunities within the BioQuarter?
So I think this is a really critical part of what we're trying to achieve with our partnership and our overall vision. It's really at the centre of it. And I think this is where what we're trying to create at BioQuarter is very much beyond, I suppose, the physical nature of the development and the creation of physical assets for either, for the NHS or for the university or for industry to live within these buildings. It's very much to create the ecosystem for innovation that wraps around the activities that will happen within these buildings. And very much to look at the completion of that journey of translational medicine all the way through to commercialization of research opportunities and creating entrepreneurship, which nurtures that next generation of companies coming up on through, and really to help us deliver on the aspect of our vision that creates inclusive growth. So this is growth much beyond just economic growth that we're talking about, but very much where a lot of these innovations and commercialization aspects can really nurture wider society benefits as well.
Great. And Kev, I just wanted to get your sense of that as well, if I can.
Yeah, just echoing what Ashley's just said. So I think one of the other thing that we've probably mentioned, the global interconnectedness that the BioQuarter must have for healthcare innovation. That there's no doubt that. So I'm going to give a really small example, Richard, of an innovation which changed the way that patients behave in NHS Lothian. And actually it didn't make any money, but it made a massive impact, was a nurse that noticed that everyone comes into hospital wearing their pajamas, and they go and lie in a bed, and they stay in the bed, and they don't get out of the bed. So what she innovated was a phrase saying, "Get out of your pajamas." Now, you can't make money out of this, Richard, but it's an example where suddenly we managed to get people out of bed quicker, and they started to leave the hospital quicker. I'm just giving you these ideas so we can innovate on the BioQuarter site and make products or ideas or concepts that could be scalable. But one thing we must do is think about products that are scalable. And echoing Ashley's piece, it's around learning that journey from the concept but really that really hard journey of actually translating, commercializing, industrializing. And that's what I think BioQuarter can offer, that pathway of doing it over and over again for everybody on there.
But there was one that came in that I thought was really interesting. And just in case, again, if there's, if there is somebody on the phone, thanks, Matthew, for this. And Nick answered it, but with the strong focus on creating a collaborative and data sharing environment to drive innovation, do you envisage asking potential tenants, particularly commercial tenants, to share data generated by the research as a prerequisite of taking space in Edinburgh BioQuarter? Also will access to data generated at the Usher Institute and QMRI be made available to the Edinburgh BioQuarter community? Nick has answered that, and I'll just very quickly read you that to save Nick having to do it again, but just for those who are joining on the phone. Great question. We're putting in place data sharing agreements with NHS boards, primary care practices and local authorities through the integrated joint boards. We would plan to do similar with other partners as they come on board if they collect health or care information that would be useful for our citizens. We're developing our information governance processes to enable us to work with any partner where their need to access data is clearly in the public interest. So I just thought that was an interesting question and not one that I thought we would probably get. And the last one here is, what are the views on consortia developing a supply chain for bid stage, in particular contractor and operator, or are you looking for a development partner who will develop a business plan with a supply chain approach, but no supply chain for the PQQ bid stage, i.e. an open supply chain if successful?
We would like to hear back from the bidders, and I suppose that leads me on to, if I could just, my final plea is that we have a questionnaire which we've put as part of our PIN, and it's that type of question that we're answering, and we would like some answers to help us develop our thought and our thought process. I think both of those points are valuable, or both routes are valuable. Which one we choose to go down, I think the market, I would like to hear back from the market to help us influence that thinking, and other parts of our procurement as well. It would be really helpful to hear back. You can download the questionnaire, and if you could send it back to us, I think the deadline is by next Friday. And obviously, the point of that really is we are developing our thoughts, and we would really like to hear back from the market to help our final proposition, which we'll go live with.
Thanks very much to Jonathan and Daniel. You're sneaking in just under the wire here. So, but a couple of questions coming in. Do you expect the university or other institution to provide anchor tenancy to some of the commercial buildings, which is an interesting point and one we haven't tackled? And how much and in what ways do you want this to this project to drive forward healthcare research and development across Scotland, not just in Edinburgh? So I don't know, feel free to pick those up, whoever would like to.
Sure, on the last one, really important point. Actually, we're already working together across Scotland on a federated safe haven network in order to create similar infrastructure and data models to allow us to work seamlessly across all the regions. There are 4 safe havens already, of which the DDI program are developing one in the east. So very much looking to work across Scotland and not just the region. And that would be both in terms of research and innovation.
Anna, do you want to pick up the point about university or other institutions providing anchor tenancies to some of the commercial buildings?
I mean, I think at this stage, the simple answer is nothing's off the table. I think these discussions will come through the competitive dialogue, and I think the ability to ensure that the viability of BioQuarter is really important. So I think these discussions will take place, and again, I would encourage the potential bidders to come forward with these types of points through the questionnaire.
Richard had put in a question about, to Richard Fagg, thanks for that, will demand modelling be made available? And I've got so excited and lost in the conversation that I can't remember if we answered it, but I didn't click it to say we had answered it. So did we answer it? You can let me know, Richard, if you like. But
I think that, again, the simple answer is we will be summarising. There's a lot of work streams that are going on across the board that will influence our proposal. The demand assessment is one of them. Obviously, our demand assessment is looking predominantly at life sciences, and BioQuarter is the health innovation piece is much broader than perhaps that type of demand assessment actually lends us to. You know, the umbrella is health, of which there's so many different factors that sit within that. So it's the diversity of BioQuarter, which is really quite unique. And to answer the question, we will be summarising that type of the demand assessment work that Cushman's have undertaken. But our expectation is that bidders will undertake their own demand assessments as well as they come forward, and obviously they do their own due diligence on the site.
Okay, good. Interesting question from Cameron. Morning, Cameron. Hope you are well. Good. It's got great potential and is a very exciting opportunity in that sense. But Cameron was just wondering how the four parties will manage and collaborate the process going forward, because of obviously people will have slightly different objectives potentially. So Cameron's question is will there be, you know, how will that be managed? Will there be a panel? If so, who will be on the panel? And will there be one or two parties who have a greater influence than others? So I suppose the idea is, I think if we kind of pick that up as, I guess, how do you see that collaboration going forward, particularly with the four key partners?
So the intention is for the partners to come together and join in a limited company ahead of the procurement exercise, and it will be that EBQ3, as it's to be called, it will be that entity that will actually launch the procurement exercise and be the statutory body that runs it. I have the pleasure of working on behalf of all of our four partners, and all four partners are equal, and I will be leading the panel that will have representatives from each of the partners, including their own procurement professionals, and it will be that panel that will actually go forward, do the marking, do the evaluation, and ultimately do the competitive dialogue. So it's a coming together of the four organisations in a smaller setting, and to try and make it as slick and easy a process as possible.
Very interesting questions from everybody. Really fascinating morning for me, certainly. Thanks very much to all of you for your questions, for your comments. That's been really valuable. I think David will probably put in the chat as well, just any details of where you can send information, send any extra queries that you've got, where you can download additional material, or do feel free to reach out to Anna. Feel free to also to connect with me, and I can also put you in contact